The relationship between Ethiopia and Eritrea is deeply intertwined, marked by both cooperation and conflict. For centuries, the two nations shared cultural and historical ties. However, the 20th century witnessed a dramatic shift in their relationship. Eritrea, a former Italian colony, was federated with Ethiopia in 1952. This federation proved short-lived, collapsing into a bitter 30-year war for Eritrean independence. In 1991, Eritrea finally achieved independence, a victory hard-won after decades of struggle. Despite the initial euphoria, the long years of conflict had sown deep seeds of mistrust between the two nations. This mistrust soon resurfaced, culminating in a bloody border war between 1998 and 2000. The war, sparked by a seemingly minor border dispute, claimed the lives of tens of thousands of people. It also resulted in significant displacement, further exacerbating the humanitarian crisis in the region. Although a peace agreement was signed in 2000, the relationship between the two countries remained fragile, characterized by periods of uneasy truce and renewed tensions. The outbreak of the Tigray War in November 2020 marked a significant turning point in the already volatile Horn of Africa. The conflict, which pitted the Ethiopian government against the Tigray People's Liberation Front, quickly drew in Eritrea on the side of Ethiopia. Eritrea's involvement in the Tigray War was driven by a complex mix of factors, including long-standing animosity towards the TPLF and a desire to secure its own strategic interests. The Tigray War had a devastating impact on the region, leading to widespread human rights abuses, mass displacement, and a dire humanitarian crisis. The conflict also exacerbated tensions between Ethiopia and Eritrea, pushing the two countries closer to the brink of renewed conflict. The presence of Eritrean troops in Ethiopia, particularly in the contested border regions, became a major point of contention, further fueling mistrust and animosity between the two nations. The continued presence of Eritrean troops in Ethiopia, particularly in the Tigray region, remains a major obstacle to improving relations between the two countries. Despite the signing of a peace agreement between Ethiopia and the TPLF in November 2022, Eritrean forces have shown little sign of withdrawing from Ethiopian territory. This has raised concerns about Eritrea's intentions and its commitment to a lasting peace in the region. Ethiopia, on the other hand, faces increasing pressure to secure the withdrawal of Eritrean troops from its territory. The presence of these troops is seen as a violation of Ethiopia's sovereignty and a threat to its national security. The continued presence of Eritrean troops also fuels instability in the region, hindering efforts to rebuild and recover from the devastating Tigray War. The complex geopolitical landscape of the Horn of Africa further complicates the relationship between Ethiopia and Eritrea. The involvement of neighboring countries, particularly Somalia and Egypt, adds another layer of complexity to the already volatile situation. Somalia, grappling with its own internal challenges, views Ethiopia's growing influence in the region with suspicion. The two countries have clashed over a range of issues, including maritime borders and Ethiopia's support for the autonomous region of Somaliland. Egypt, a regional heavyweight, is wary of Ethiopia's ambitious plans for the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Egypt, heavily reliant on the Nile River for its water supply, fears that the GERD will significantly reduce its water share, potentially leading to severe water shortages. This has strained relations between the two countries, with Egypt seeking to safeguard its interests in the Nile River basin. Section 5. Ethiopia's Red Sea ambitions, a source of tension. Ethiopia's aspirations for access to the Red Sea, a vital maritime trade route, have further heightened tensions with Eritrea. Landlocked Ethiopia has long sought to establish a presence on the Red Sea, viewing it as crucial for its economic development. Eritrea, with its long coastline along the Red Sea, controls access to the strategic waterway. This has created a source of friction between the two countries, with Ethiopia seeking to secure its interests in the Red Sea. The potential for conflict over access to the Red Sea remains a significant concern. Ethiopia's determination to secure a foothold on the Red Sea, coupled with Eritrea's control over access to the waterway, creates a volatile situation. increasing the risk of renewed conflict between the two nations. Section 6. The potential for renewed conflict, a real and present danger. The confluence of these factors, the legacy of past conflicts, the unresolved issues stemming from the Tigray War, the involvement of neighboring countries and Ethiopia's Red Sea ambitions, has created a tinderbox-like situation in the Horn of Africa. The potential for renewed conflict between Ethiopia and Eritrea is real and presents a grave threat to regional stability. The situation is further complicated by the lack of trust between the two countries. Years of conflict and mistrust have created deep divisions, making it difficult to build a lasting peace. The absence of a strong and effective regional mechanism to mediate disputes and foster dialogue further exacerbates the situation. Section 7. Regional implications, a humanitarian catastrophe in the making. A renewed conflict between Ethiopia and Eritrea would have catastrophic consequences for the entire Horn of Africa. It would lead to widespread death and destruction, further destabilizing an already volatile region. The conflict would also trigger a massive humanitarian crisis, with millions of people displaced and in need of urgent assistance. The conflict would also have severe economic repercussions, disrupting trade and investment in the region. It would further exacerbate poverty and inequality, setting back development efforts by decades. The international community has a moral obligation to prevent a renewed conflict and to work towards a peaceful and sustainable solution to the crisis. Section 8. The international community's role averting disaster. The international community has a crucial role to play in preventing a renewed conflict between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Diplomacy, dialogue and de-escalation must be the cornerstones of any efforts to address the crisis. The international community must use its leverage to encourage both sides to engage in meaningful dialogue, address their differences through peaceful means, and work towards a sustainable peace agreement. Targeted sanctions, arms embargoes and other measures should be considered to pressure all parties to cease hostilities and engage in good faith negotiations. The international community must also provide robust support for humanitarian assistance and work to address the root causes of the conflict, including poverty, inequality, and lack of development. Section 9. Conclusion. The need for dialogue and diplomacy. The situation in the Horn of Africa is at a critical juncture. The potential for renewed conflict between Ethiopia and Eritrea poses a grave threat to regional stability and human security. It is imperative that all parties prioritize dialogue, diplomacy, and a peaceful resolution to the crisis. The international community must play a proactive role in facilitating dialogue, providing humanitarian assistance, and addressing the root causes of the conflict. A lasting peace in the Horn of Africa requires a commitment from all stakeholders to address the underlying issues, build trust, and work towards a more stable and prosperous future for all. The alternative, renewed conflict and its devastating consequences, is simply unacceptable. The time for action is now.